Good morning. It's 11 o'clock on Saturday morning and your time for your weekly dose of Deep Drive, our podcast powered by Kotak Mahindra Prime. Now, on this week's episode, we are going to be looking at the year gone by. Yes, it is the end of 2025, which has just whizzed by. And we're going to recap on what's happened, what's not happened, and all the highs and lows of 2025. I'm Hormazd Sorabjee.
I am Ketan Thakkar. Yes, Hormazd, what a phenomenal year it was. Right from big product launches,
Big announcements.
New brands coming in. Finally, Tesla entered Indian market. Vinfast, setting up a factory in India, announcing big bang announcement, doubling down on the investments in India with buses and two-wheelers. We had E20. We had more EVs coming on the Indian roads. We had big bang announcement of 2030 plans. It was a phenomenal year, filled with headlines and kept us active throughout the year. And it was really exciting to cover that.
Yeah, so lots of news for sure. But, it didn't really start off with a bang because, Ketan, I think very exciting for us, Bharat Mobility Show this year. And a lot of action there as always. But the sentiment in the market was rather muted. In fact, it looked like we were either, let's say, the growth was going to be flat or even declining. And that really wasn't a good start.
Absolutely.
Of course, GST came in, which we haven't talked about. That's really a big one.
Absolutely.
Which really saved the day.
Yes.
And was historic because rarely have we seen taxes being reduced. They always increase.
Absolutely.
I think this was something which we've not seen of in decades.
Absolutely.
But let's start off with the year which kicked off, because I think from 24 we went into 25 realizing that the market was sputtering.
Yes, indeed. Market was slowing down. I think the first quarter of the year, 2025, we saw market actually cumulatively coming down to about a low single-digit growth. And as we entered the new financial year, the fear was that the market is further going to slow down. And in fact, at the beginning of the year, the industry association did forecasted a growth of just 1 to 2%. Yes, agreed, the base was getting high and volumes were rising, but clearly the income growth was not keeping pace with the expected growth in the Indian market. Indian market, third largest in the world, probably the only market that is outperforming rest of the world. And one was expecting that the sustained excitement post-COVID was going to go on. But the base was catching up. The economy was slowing. And
cars were just getting too expensive, I think.
Indeed.
And that's why the price correction really made such a world of a difference.
Absolutely, Hormazd. In fact, you could potentially say, the tale of two halves, at least as far as 2025 is concerned. The first 9 months of this calendar year, the market was actually slipping into negative territory. And then we got that GST booster, GST 2.0, a significant reduction in taxes. And that's when we started seeing the volume started coming back again. Now, as we sit at the fag end of the year, the sense is that market will grow at market will grow by about 4.5 to 5%, which is double than what the industry expectation was. And again, the expectation is that this momentum will sustain. We are seeing that the good momentum of September, October continuing in November and December. So it is we're going to end on a good note, and it is likely to sustain the momentum in the coming year. But the double-digit growth is still elusive, but we are in a good, healthy 5 to 6% kind of a growth for a market.
So, we'll come to the GST, but, as you said, there was this big spike, obviously record sales in the heady months of, I think, September, October, November, where it was, combination of festive, combination of GST, price corrections.
Yes.
I think manufacturers were smart. Cars that were overpriced,
Yeah.
they took GST as a excuse
Right.
to kind of, or reason to kind of reduce their prices beyond what the tax benefit was.
That's right.
So I think a lot of people did that, getting into lower tax slabs from a road tax point of view as well.
That's right.
So I think a very, let's say clever pricing strategies which we saw. And, I think it really made a big difference because honestly, on certain cars, when you get 2 and 3 lakhs off, you just automatically go out and buy it, because my sense is that we Indians love a good deal. So I think you may not have been in the market to buy a car.
Right.
But I think, everyone just saw that and they went ahead and buy it. In fact, we did a podcast to saying the best time to buy a car was at that moment.
Indeed.
So now we are seeing prices going to creep up again. Already people have announced this price increases for 2025.
True.
So, that's really the name of the game. But I think, Ketan, let's look at, I think, some of the, fundamentals. The sense I get is even with this, getting back to double-digit growth is going to be hard. I mean, we are now inching towards 5 million. We might even cross 5 million. That's going to be the magic number.
Right.
And then to have growth beyond that, it's going to take, a lot more. I think you'll need more models. You'll need more, let's say, competition in the more affordable segments, which are difficult to enter right now. And it seems the industry, has got everything ring-fenced, and it's just going to be like small incremental growth because even the models are just going to be, let's say the choice isn't expanding rapidly.
I agree with you, Hormazd. I think this is one question that we asked literally every car manufacturer post the GST cut. Now that the much needed price correction is done, what is your anticipation? Where will the market go from here? And the consensus appears to be that the long-term growth of the Indian market is going to be in that range of 5 to 7%. Earlier, the thought process was that the Indian market should grow more than the GDP growth. And the GDP growth has been around 6 to 7%. But over the last few years, we've seen that the growth rate has been sub-GDP growth, and which was concerning. Yes, definitely the price increases was having an impact. And of course, the infrastructure challenge. The challenge of India is that we have mega metropolitan cities where congestion is playing a big impact.
Congestion and pollution.
And pollution, absolutely. And that's where people are going back to probably shared mobility, public transport. And that's the reason why we need to have sustained growth in infrastructure, which is what is going to fuel the further growth in motorization. The priority is always public transport. I mean, if you have efficient public transport, then it gets a lot more easier for huge masses living in mega metropolitan cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore to actually commute. So congestion is an issue, infrastructure, the pace of infrastructure is an issue, rising cost is an issue. So one is expecting that the long-term growth will be about 5 to 7%. The important point you mentioned about the affordable end of the market. Yeah. I think the big expectation was post the GST cut, whether there'll be the entry car buyers will come back. I mean, will an entry buyer buy that car? I mean, there's not much of excitement in terms of the model action happening there, and there are very few players there. So at that price point, despite the GST cut, we've seen some kind of revival happening, and Maruti also, proactively ensuring that the benefits have been sweetened along with the GST cut. We have seen some kind of revival happening, but unfortunately, if you were to look at the penetration, and which is what the number crunching that we were doing just ahead of the podcast, Jan to November, the hatchback share has slipped to 21%. It was 23% last year. The expectation was
down, yeah.
It's come down. Expectation was that.
But sorry, you said what was the price of an Alto on road?
On road, somewhere around 7.5 lakh rupees. The top end variant with all airbags. Now, whether an entry buyer will go for an Alto, not too sure.
That price is just ridiculous.
Absolutely. And more people are moving towards a quality used car. And that's becoming like the first car in the family. So that is resulting into probably motorization moving towards more used cars.
I think you're right. The bottom end of the market, which was really the backbone, it kind of mobilized India with the Maruti 800 and then the Alto. I think that's really gone because I think with increasing aspirations, as you said, people going in to rather have a bigger, nicer used car for the same money, which gives them more status. Or because of the GST price cut, I think they're jumping into compact SUVs because if you take in absolute terms,
absolutely,
there's been the maximum benefit there, isn't it?
True. In fact, sub-4-meter SUVs have the biggest benefit out there.
Yeah.
You just think of a scenario, Hormazd, a prospective buyer with a budget of 5.5 lakh rupees out there. Now, if he gets a used Swift or a Desire, which is quality, which is modern, which has all the features, which is safer.
Correct.
Now, will he go for a used Swift or will he go for an Alto?
Correct.
Which
and
is
in taller status also, it is really, I think that's really quite important, especially in small towns.
Absolutely. And with,
an Alto really is basic. It's really the modern Nano in that sense.
Absolutely.
And clearly we know why the Nano didn't do well. So I think really with aspirations also, that is really kind of really impacting the demand for cars at the base end where the only reason people are buying them because they can't afford anything more. And that's obviously the message you are giving to your peers when you're seen driving that car.
Absolutely. And that is the reason why, Hormuz, we've seen the share of hatchback falling, but the biggest segment is sub 4 meter SUV.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, people are moving up to SUV, and because of penetration of finance, attractive interest rate, people want to kind of, and with the attractive schemes that runs up to almost 5 years of financing, people are willing to spend that money in interest rather than going for just another car out there, not really fulfilling the aspiration.
Yeah, and Ketan, I think what I found interesting is with this GST correction, which happened, Maruti, the cheapest or most affordable Maruti is now the Espresso.
Yeah,
and not the Alto.
Yes.
So I think even from Maruti's point of view, strategically, it's a way of saying that, yeah, look, the Alto doesn't have a long-term future. And we've also said we don't think there's a next-gen Alto coming out.
Yes.
So clearly, that's a way of admission of where that segment is going. And they're placing their bets on their Espresso being the kind of first step into the Maruti range.
Absolutely. And, we've tried to understand from Maruti about the future of small car. And they do claim after in the recent sales call that with the media guys that small car demand is back. In fact, it has got to do with the supply side, because all of a sudden now there is demand for small cars, but remains to be seen because the story on ground zero does not appear to be that promising. I mean, are there more takers for a small car? Doesn't appear so. Maruti is rather confident that once supply comes in, you'll see penetration moving up, but it's difficult. I mean, and with lack of option, the category is usually.
But I think first we need to qualify what is the definition of a small car. I think in this sense it's the hatchback.
Yeah.
Because don't forget, a small car also is a compact SUV.
True.
So I think it's a body style issue is what I
preference change.
A preference change. The hatchback is really seen right at the bottom end of the pecking order, lowest in the hierarchy in terms of status, in terms of image.
True.
So I think the SUV is right on top, sedan somewhere in between. So I think they're all small cars, but with different body styles.
Absolutely.
So I think it's the small car is there, but it's in compact SUVs. And I think that's really a very interesting trend we are seeing, because it really just shows how aspirational Indian buyers are. And of course, apart from the, let's say, image of an SUV, there's also the practicality.
Absolutely.
Because big wheels, high seating position, high ground clearance, all makes a difference even in the way you own. So I think really a win-win throughout for SUVs, and clearly it's coming at the expense of hatchbacks.
Absolutely. And another important element, Hormazd, over the last few years, we spoke about rising cost. The average price points had crossed 10 lakh. Now, it got corrected a bit. If you were to see a weighted GST reduction, it is about 5 to 7%. And auto manufacturers have sweetened it by giving it a little bit more. So, benefit ranges from about 7 to 9% depending on the vehicle maker. But if you look at the average price point of the Indian passenger vehicle market had crossed 10 lakh rupees. So, it shows that market is moving up. People are willing to spend that extra money. And we've seen that wherever the new model action is more, the category grows. And we've seen in the hatchback space, majority of the players have exited. We only have Maruti, Hyundai with i10, and Renault with Kwid. Otherwise, majority of the
Tata with Tiago.
And Tata with Tiago, right? Yeah. And Tata, the options are very few.
Very few.
So
that could be one reason also. It's like in the sedan segment, it's a bit of a catch-22 and chicken and egg. I mean, of course, the demand is going down, but when you start pulling out models, the demand is even less.
Absolutely.
So, I think people are not committed to that segment. And, Ketan, is quite obvious. Hatchbacks margins are wafer thin.
Yes.
SUVs perceived value is much higher, so people will pay more, whereas the manufacturing cost might even be the same.
Right.
So your margins are much bigger in SUVs. So this, as I said, SUVs on all fronts, from the customer point of view, from the infrastructure point of view, from the manufacturer point of view, it just, is a winner.
Yeah, absolutely. So GST was to drive motorization. It has helped in the short term. The sustenance of that needs to be seen, likely to be mid-single digit growth in the coming years. But the model action will continue in the SUV space. And we spoke about the sweet spot moving to 4.3 meter. The sub 4 meter becomes the largest part of the market. So SUV wave is likely to continue. And an interesting trend also on the powertrain front, Hormazd, that this year, the CNG penetration increased to 21%. So far, the whatever numbers that we've seen. Diesel was at 19%. Last year, diesel share was about 18%. So diesel share is moving up. CNG share is moving up. Last year, both of them were neck and neck.
Yeah, and I think diesel's share moving up largely led by Mahindra.
Yes.
probably the one company that is single-handedly taking the diesel share up.
Yes, I completely agree. So the diesel share is moving up, CNG share is moving up. EV penetration has reached about 4.8%. Right at the beginning of the year, I mean, you mentioned about Bharat Mobility Show. There was so much of excitement with regards to EV, and all of a sudden we felt that the inflection point is near us, and we did see excitement, and we did see volume going up, and volumes have grown significantly. We saw first full year of Mahindra's BEVs. So the penetration at this juncture is 4.8%. It had started hitting 6 to 7%, but the GST cut, Hormazd, actually made people rethink whether they want to move towards EV or not.
It's very interesting and just shows how important, taxation is in EV growth. That, we're at 5%, which is actually fantastic.
Among the best in the world.
Amongst the best in the world. And, hats off to the government for really believing in, let's say, that kind of strategy, and going forward with that strategy, rather, to really make EVs as affordable as possible. But again, I think, it's that little bit of correction with the ICE, and people are going back to ICE.
Yes.
But Ketan, I think it's not only the pricing. I think because people are on the fence for other reasons. The biggest elephant in the room today is charging infra.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, and it's sad to say that it is just not keeping pace. While a lot of announcements have been done, even in the PME drive, they've talked about, let's say, incentives.
Additional 2,000 crore for charging infra.
But, we've just got structural issues.
I agree.
Whether it's with the discoms, whether it's with the RWAs, the residential associations, it's just, it's just not where it should be. I mean, I had a personal experience, went to Alwal for JS Four Wheels 40th anniversary, good friend Nikun Sangi. The 9e, XEV 9e I was driving was just about, let's say, under 50%. I said I'd top it up at a static charger at the workshop itself. It took about 20-25 minutes just to get it rebooted. It wasn't connecting, nothing to do with the workshop or where it was saying. It's just connectivity.
Right.
And, figuring out why it was not working. And that is, was a real pain. Lost a lot of time, late for an appointment. So net, public charging is a hit and miss.
I agree with you.
And that is a problem. I mean, it can be a hit. You can have a great experience, but you can have a miss. In fact, just yesterday I was in Pune and driving back, stopped to fill petrol in the A6 I was in, and there were some 2 chargers over there, HP pump, and you could see these guys phoning, trying to connect, trying to call a call center again, just not working. I went up to them, kya ho raha hai? I said, nahi, charge nahi ho raha hai.
Right.
So there's always some issue, not always some issue. There's a very high chance of there being some issue. Don't want to sound negative and try to be someone who's kind of EVs, because I'm very much a believer in them. But you have to say the truth and you have to be practical. And the fact is that charging infra is still a hit and miss. And that is going to, in my view, going to be really limiting the growth, because, at the end of the day, without that, it's just not possible to grow. I mean, imagine, having a petrol car and not knowing when you turn up at the fuel pump whether there's going to be fuel or not.
Right. Now, it's a very difficult spot to be in. The charge point operators who have set up these infra, they often struggle from the load. I mean,
exactly.
The utilization levels are in single digits sometimes. So how do you maintain them? You got to have, at the petrol pump, we have a man helping us with fueling. So we've seen some of the vehicle manufacturers are now experimenting with the strategy of having an individual standing near the charging station to help you out with your charging. So yes, these are niggles of penetration of a new age category that is happening. A lot of excitement, and the belief is that earlier there were only select few players who were trying to build the category. With the entry of Maruti Suzuki, Hyundai, Mahindra, Tata, and the others coming in the fray, there will be now a collective effort. And one is hoping that with this collective effort, all these niggles and inefficiencies that we see are addressed.
So, Ketan, EVs 2025, I think 2 big EV brands, one, the biggest EV brand, Tesla, in India.
Yes.
Quite a landmark entry. It was quite interesting that I think India was more excited about Tesla than Tesla was excited about India at that time. Launched the Model Y, a very low-key launch as far as Tesla went, coming in as a CBU imported from China, where it's quite reasonable. I think reasonably priced for a CBU. But I think, very, very slow start. But Ketan, what's really blown me away is the long-term strategy of Tesla in India. I saw their Delhi workshop and, dealership, and it's just unbelievable the scale of that for the very limited amount of cars they sold. And I think their charging infra is actually next level. And I think the reason to buy a Tesla is really their superchargers. I mean, from what I hear is they take control of the entire ecosystem except probably the power coming to you. So they make their own chargers. They have their own software because Elon Musk doesn't want, he wants 99.95% uptime. And, like we were talking earlier, the way I struggle, I think if you have a Tesla, the way it will work, if there are superchargers, just very few of them, mainly in the cities, you just drive up, flap opens, plug in, and that's it. It's automatically debited to your account. No fiddling with apps, no waiting for the charger to kind of boot up, all that sort of thing. It's just instant. And what I was told, this is one of the reasons why Tesla is hesitant to go out there on the highway, because they don't have full control of power supply. I mean, they might need their own transformer. They're dependent on whether the load will be there or not there. And that, if it's not in their control, they can't guarantee that 99.95 uptime. So I think, Tesla, all said and done, it's an amazing company. And I think, even the way their cars work, everything is so well integrated. Even they make their own screens, for example. They just make everything as much as possible. Their software is just phenomenal. It's really the iPhone or the Apple of electric vehicles. On the other side, you have Vinfast also making a big entry. We've driven their cars. We have 5 and 6. 6 was more impressive, but again, it's a company that's playing the value card. Clearly, it's not as sophisticated as some of the other EV players over there. But again, it's going to put pressure on Indian OEMs. They come in such an aggressive way. And just imagine if the Chinese were here. I think that's one thing which the Indian auto industry has to be thankful for, is that the Chinese haven't been allowed to kind of bulldoze their way in here. A lot of restrictions, a lot of barriers.
I agree.
But I think, again, looking at the EVs, I think a great year for Mahindra, all said and done. I mean, jumping to number 3 with their 2 BEVs, which are at the high end of the market. So, I think it's been a fantastic, year in that sense. And I think BYD consistently the number 1 imported EV manufacturer. Chinese and again, MG, which has kind of come into its own and really established the Windsor as by far the number 1 selling EV in the market.
It's amazingly captured the electric vehicle market, Hormazd. I mean, clearly we've seen right from more players coming into infrastructure hiccups, but clearly the penetration that one was anticipating at the beginning of the year, like this is going to be a year of infection. Clearly, we've seen reality check there, and we're likely to end the year at around 5%, which is very encouraging.
It's double of what we ended the last year on, isn't it?
Correct. It is almost double. It was about 2.7%, so almost double. So, I mean, phenomenal. It goes to show that more brands, more companies commit to the segment, more choice for the buyers. There'll be a lot more confidence with the prospective buyers. But yes, some of these stray incidents of charging infra or some SAR incident here or there with product related issue, it does pull the category back, but we are seeing more and more credible options emerging.
And I think one thing we didn't touch upon is the entry. Well, technically they will enter in next year is Maruti with the e-Vitara.
Oh, yes.
I mean, I have never seen, let's say, an entry that is in a way so muddled. The way they've kind of, done the test drive, not given information, not given the price. It just smacks of Maruti not being confident of this product. And I think once you drive it, you can understand why. Really very, very disappointing, from, let's say, the number 1 auto manufacturer. You'd think they would really make a big, take a really a fantastic shot at this. The only redemption could be some killer price, which I don't know if they will do. If that happens, then of course everything turns on its head. But assuming the price is going to be 20 plus lakhs, the car, it was designed as a skateboard, but you really don't see it's even got the benefits of a skateboard. Packaging is terrible. Space is bad, boot space is bad, interior space, not great. And really, in a sense, not a cutting edge vehicle, which one would expect. And their promise is banking on charging infrastructure at their dealerships. I don't think people are really going to care about that. You need to have the charging infra at home. That's really what drives EV sales today so far, is what we've noticed. But I think, so I think that was the big one which came. And of course, now we'll see in 26 how it performs.
Hormazd, I was there for their drive, and their sales pitch is reliability, assuredness to the buyer who's going to buy. But yes, on product spec perspective, having seen what Mahindras and Tatas have delivered, MG has delivered, clearly it does appear, it appears to be a compromise to me. It's
very underwhelming.
Very underwhelming. Absolutely underwhelming. It's safe. I drove the vehicle. It's safe. Even the reliability with regards to the range it gives, that was very good. But again, it lacks so much that the other competitors offer. So they feel that the category is still at its infancy, and they are trying to address the pain areas, which is the charging infra, the reliability of range, which they feel has been compromised over the years, which is what has lent EV a bad name. They feel that with assured range, with assured infra, and with a well-proportioned product, that they'll be able to find buyers. And they feel that 90% of buyers today are the second car buyer. It is, at this juncture, EV is not a first-time car buyer's phenomenon. So they feel that at this juncture, let's deliver the solution and let the category build. Now, there are two sides of the coin. That's a safe and assured way of entering into a category, and they feel that the category penetration is still very low, so it's not too late. They will rather drive the category rather than running for market share at this point in time. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting now whether consumers lap it up, and the only way that they can come back into it is through pricing, or else it's going to be very difficult for them to come back.
Well, if you look at it in terms of Maruti, a lot of firsts. It's their first EV. It's probably the most fastest EV,
yes,
take it from a
the fastest Maruti I ever
fastest Maruti, exactly. So all very, very different. But again, I think, when you look at this product, I think the one thing you do realize is that Maruti just doesn't have the engineering chops in EVs the way other global OEMs do. And, I think neither does Toyota, who's actually partnered with them. And Toyota also haven't really done a great show on EVs, and they're launching their equivalent next month itself. So I think that's probably, realization of that is probably why Maruti is fighting so hard to have, for the CAFE regulations, let's say, for the small cars, because clearly that remains their strength. But the world has evolved, and they really need to start developing strengths in core areas, which are in different segments of the market.
Absolutely. What was, if I could just, since you're talking Maruti, if I could just bring in the Creta EV as well, the first full year, it was launched last December.
That's right. Yeah, Creta EV, forgot again, not a great start. I think, it just tells you a lot about the Indian car buyer. I think they want some differentiation when they buy an EV. It's really what was happening in Europe some time back, and that was the whole reason why Mercedes went with a completely different family, different look, because the view was people wanted to be seen in an EV. Right. But of course, that changed in Europe, and Mercedes, kind of, let's say, really lost out over there. Their EV story has been really almost a disaster in Europe. And the designer, Gordon Wagner, I think he lost his job because of that. Because Europe has gone back to, an EV is just another powertrain, and we want to be in a clean powertrain. And I think that's the way the Creta EV has come into India. But we are really not ready for, let's say, looking at EVs, or the customer doesn't want to look at EVs with just a regular car with a different kind of powertrain. Right. Either it's petrol, diesel, or EV. Right. So, and I think that's how the Creta has been positioned. Fantastic car. In fact, it's one of our favorite cars. Very sorted, very sensible, no-nonsense car, but lacks a bit of that wow factor. And again, coming to the Creta, Ketan, I think Creta for the first time is going to be under pressure. You've got the Sierra, which has come. You've got the new Seltos, which is there. We talked about it in our last podcast. You've got, facelifts from Volkswagen and Skoda. You've got the Duster coming. And I think for the first time, there are discounts here and discounts on the Creta to the extent that they haven't been before.
That's interesting.
So I think really Creta is
Leader's
going to be
feeling the heat.
Yeah, leader is feeling the heat, and if Creta is feeling the heat, it means Hyundai is feeling the heat.
Yes.
Because really Creta is the main pillar of the company. So it's going to be a very interesting and critical year for Hyundai in 2026 going forward.
Yeah. Now we've deliberated electric vehicle to the hilt. Just one last element on electric vehicles, Hormazd. At the luxury car market, at the luxury end of the market, the penetration have been extremely encouraging. Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Audi, Volvo, they've all been leading from the front. They've been bringing in their global portfolio into the country. And interestingly, the penetration of EVs at the luxury end of the market is likely to be in the range of 15 to 17%. BMW has been leading the charge ahead of Mercedes.
iX1 has just kind of
phenomenal pricing. Phenomenal pricing. And interestingly, at the luxury end of the market, the EV pricing probably is more attractive than ICE pricing.
It is, because the delta is much more.
Right.
The duties are much more on ICE vehicles. They're all kind of compounds and cascades.
Right.
So when you're looking at it, clearly, they're, in terms of pricing, you've got parity there.
Absolutely.
In a lot of cases, some cases even cheaper.
Absolutely.
If you bring in the road tax element, which in some states there's no road tax at all.
Absolutely.
So I think in that sense, EVs definitely make sense in the luxury segment. They've got more range, so they can go longer distances typically. Plus, everyone who affords a Plus EV typically would have some form of home charging at home. Right. So, of course, I think this is the segment that they would, and they would have multiple cars in the household. Absolutely. Also. So it's not going to be their only car.
So they have a chauffeur to take the car for charging.
Exactly.
It be
right.
Charging at home, charging in office.
Exactly.
So I think it's much more sorted at that end of the market. And interestingly, when it comes to mainstream, the thought is probably I would want my next car to be EV, but not the current one that I'm going to buy. Whereas at the luxury end of the market, people are actually willing to say that, let's go for EV because everything is sorted there.
Yeah, that could be, I want my second car to be an EV in that case.
Right.
Or third car, which is very possible.
Yeah, in fact, there are repeat purchases of EV at the top end of the market.
Correct.
People are having multiple EVs in their portfolio.
That's right.
So clearly, if it serves the purpose, people are lapping it up as long as there's value for Indian.
I know of a friend who's got an S-Class and he's got a Tiago as well as a runabout, So I think clearly people see the value in it. And I think, to end on our discussion on EV, I think what's coming out clear is not just the economics. It's just that EVs in town are just so much nicer to drive.
Yes.
And they're getting, let's say, more reliable. A lot of them, the issues which people had, especially with Tata and Mahindra, I think that's getting sorted out in terms of the glitches. And I think people are learning how to really get the most out of their EVs, getting more comfortable, confident with it. And then once that happens, you're completely hooked.
Yeah, absolutely. A conviction is that once you drive an EV, once you own an EV, you actually don't want to go back to ICE. And so it's only the fence sitters who are actually a bigger challenging factor for the vehicle makers to address. So it's going to be interesting.
And those fence sitters coming back, Ketan, that, the minute the price was not as attractive as it was compared to ICE,
yes,
they flipped to ICE.
Absolutely. They did that.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how the year 2026 is going to be. Sticking to powertrain, Hormazd, let me bring you in with E20. That was one of the biggest discussion points throughout the year.
That's right. Very controversial. I think it's blown up. I think, frankly, E20 is something which we know is happening. But I think just the way the government introduced it, it was a little kind of ham-fisted, just, bulldoze onto the consumer. Clearly, the big issue is a big drop in fuel efficiency, and that really impacts a lot of people because don't forget, as it is, it's hurting people's pockets, running costs. And there's been a considerable drop. ARA tested 1 to 6%, but in our test, depending on the car, it was between 3 and 12% for the newer cars, and older cars, BS4 cars, which you also tested, around 9 to 10%. Wow. So that's quite a big drop in fuel efficiency. And clearly, I think, how do I say? It's something that could have been compensated for with, let's say, a reduction in
fuel
prices. If that had happened, everyone would have been okay. Now, of course, there's the big worry of what will it do to old engines.
Right.
We've been tracking this quite a lot. A lot of people in our team have really old cars.
Right.
Sergis has an old A-Star, and he's also been tracking to see if there's any damage. Nothing has kind of cropped up right now, but we assume that let's say in a year or two, some parts will need to be replaced. But it's not that the engines, they just stall and the whole engine.
These are manageable issues.
For me, the big issue really is the increase in fuel consumption, because that really impacts the consumer. And of course, one upside is that the octane rating has gone up. So really for high performance cars, it benefits. But that doesn't really kind of offset the lower energy density E20 has, and that really is a problem. So anyway, it's interesting. I think noise has died down a bit, though we still get a lot of queries of people saying that I'm thinking of buying a car. Should I buy a petrol because it's because of E20?
Yeah.
I think that education is not there. That all cars currently sold now are all E20 compliant. So you won't have any problems from a reliability point of view because all the material has been upgraded. What you will find is that your fuel consumption is not as good as it should be. But again, let's see. I think we'll take a call again after 1 year of it. April 2026 is going to be 1 full year since it's been pan-India. And I think, as time goes on, we'll really be able to see the true impact of E20 and the damage it does.
Now, clearly, it has helped the Indian government in saving on the import bill. And it serves a national purpose in that sense, but probably could have been rolled out in a much more calibrated with lot more education or awareness around it.
I think, over here, the way you're pricing it, the way ethanol is priced, it clearly is supporting the agricultural industry and the farmers and not the motor. That's the sense one gets.
So what should be the next step in your assessment?
So I think
E27?
I don't think they will go to E27. I think E20 should be the base fuel. I think government has realized that, but I think they should now go to flex fuel, but you need a policy for that.
Right.
There has to be incentive both for the manufacturer and the customer.
Right.
So, if typically you have to, when you do a flex fuel vehicle, there has to be some tax reduction, and so that people buy it. Also, then, it's more, let's say, economically viable for manufacturers to make flex fuel vehicles.
Right.
And then the fuel price also has to be adjusted accordingly, just the way it is done. We talked about this in our E20 podcast earlier.
Right.
But I think the sense I get is E20 will be the base fuel. A lot of cars already, which people don't know, are E27 compliant and E30 compliant.
Right.
Because manufacturers, when they go to E20, it doesn't involve much to take it to E30.
Right.
The grade of material and all, it's really everyone does that.
Right.
So I think, so we've been future-proofed that way. But I think for me, I think ethanol or biofuels, honestly, from a, let's say, environment perspective, is so much better than fossil fuel. And I think this is what amazes me is that, you have this backlash on E20, but no one ever thinks of our little blue planet.
Yes.
And I think that's what's really disappointing. And so I think, just on that basis, we have to reduce CO2 as much as possible. And this is in a way circular. So,
right.
You kind of, what you emit, it goes back. You take out from the ground, not under the ground, the CO2, and then it's sort of circular. But I think... so I think E20 we'll have to see. That was another big one for 2025.
Right. I mean, just bringing in hybrid just for the argument's sake, because 2024 was about EV versus hybrid. Now, clearly, that debate has died down. It's people are going for both. It's not either or. They've realized that the future is going to be multi-fuel. The hybrid penetration has remained limited because of limited number of models. But clearly everyone realizes world over and even in India that hybrid is going to be an integral part of the future. And there are going to be future hybrid powertrains coming.
Absolutely. And when you go to flex fuel, I think hybrid makes even more sense.
That's
so it kind of compensates for the, fuel efficiency loss with the hybrid powertrain. So I think a flex fuel hybrid makes a lot of sense. So hopefully, there will be some benefit for that and manufacturers will go down that route. So I think, that's how it is. Yeah.
And we've also seen the change in approach. I mean, yes, Indian government is focused on electrification, but now it's no more about just 100% EV. Now, there is that reality check that has set in, and we are now moving towards the multi-path future. And that is where it gets complex for smaller players with single product to kind of deal with so many multiple power powertrains and yet compete in a market which is so cutthroat, isn't it, Hormazd?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So with that, Hormazd, shall we have a quick recap on each of the companies and how it was for them? Maruti Suzuki?
Yeah, so Maruti Suzuki, I think Victoris was a big launch.
Yes.
But I think clearly in terms of increasing market share, not too much done.
Yeah.
Clearly nothing earth-shattering. E-Vitara at the end of the year, which is actually going to be for next year. Really not, as I said, didn't give you too much confidence on their, let's say, EV capabilities.
Yeah.
Victoris, again, well-sorted car based on the Grand Vitara. And, clearly a car that should do well, and now through the Arena network. And I think Maruti playing on its strengths of, let's say cars that are fundamentally of good quality, reliable, and very easy on the pocket. And that's really their formula, which I think, they're still playing to the hilt.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a difficult year, I would say, Hormazd, from Maruti Suzuki's perspective. Jan to November, they are still in negative. The market has grown by 4%. So clearly they are seeing their market share slipping to decades low. Yes, in between, because of the strike thing, we had seen their market share fall. But on a sustained basis, it has been on a downward hill. They keep reiterating this fact that they want to go back to 50% share. It's going to be an uphill climb for sure. But looking at the long term and 2030 vision, $8 billion committed to the Indian market. And like you said, I think they are focusing on the core of the market, and the future appears to be a lot more in that sweet spot of 10 to 12 lakh rupees market.
Right.
Going to see a lot many compact, subcompact SUVs, MPVs coming in from Maruti. So while in the short term, they're going to face the brunt of intense competition in the mid-size SUV space, but they are hoping to make a comeback with the smaller SUVs and multi-pathway hybrids in the future to make a comeback. And they've been a flag bearer and a driver of CNG penetration in the country.
Yeah,
that has done phenomenally well. So I think a difficult year from a Maruti Suzuki standpoint, and one is waiting to see new products coming in. It's been a case of just restructuring their portfolio, moving from hatches to UVs, and probably that drive is likely to come only post 2026, 27.
Yeah. And let's look at Hyundai. I think for them, the venue, the big launch.
Yes.
Really, we drove the car. Excellent product. I think a little pricey.
Yeah.
Clearly, again, Hyundai now listed company. I think bottom line before market share, profit before market share has been their mantra. So I think they really not made any big noise on, let's say, increasing market share. But again, I think Hyundai quite a significant year because, gone public.
Yes.
And first time in the history, they've got an Indian CEO, Tarun Garg, which I think is really a fantastic, let's say, appointment in that sense. Clearly, admission that you need an Indian to run and so-called Indian company, though it is Korean, and Indianize it as much as possible. I think in terms of product, I think fundamentally it was just the venue and the Creta EB.
Yes, agree, Hormazd. I think the product paucity at Hyundai continues, and something that the company is aware of, but they've addressed it. Again, huge commitment from the global management, the global CEO.
Jose Munoz, 45,000 crores.
Yes, 45,000 crore. Huge amount of investment committed to India.
So a lot of companies have been 2025 has been the year of we are committed to India and India is the next. So I think it's looking good that way. I think a realization with what's happening in China and all other parts of the world, tariffs in the US, that, hey, look, all these markets are, kind of finding barriers over here. India is the place we should invest. Of course, the structure of the market is what makes it hugely challenging because it's so focused on the bottom end. And so, let's say wafer thin margins over here, very difficult to operate in that thing. But I think what's clear is that no one is going to exit this market, and even the small bit players are, redoubling up. I mean, even Stellantis, really, I think out of all the OEMs, they are the ones which really, in my view, don't have a big plan, but still they're not going to exit soon. They've done well with, let's say, revamping the C3 and the C3 Aircross and Basalt, which I really like those cars. We've said that earlier. But again, I think Renault, big plans. Nissan, I'm not sure. But
Renault's acquired the factory.
Exactly. So I think Renault really leading the charge from that once alliance which there was. So I think absolutely. So Hyundai, then I think let's talk about the Indian players, what they did. I think a fantastic year for Mahindra and Mahindra.
Oh, phenomenal.
I mean, they just continue to astound with the way they've grown. and the way they make profits. I think maybe I think the BEVs really have given them a lot of volume. I think BEVs are what about now? That
8% of the total volumes.
Yeah, so 8% of the total volume, that's ahead of what the industry market penetration is. That's really a kind of endorsement of their products.
Hormazd, I've been seeing their sustained run, and I've been watching. I'm like, maybe there's a speed breaker along the way.
Yeah.
Maybe now they'll slow down. But this has been a phenomenal run, a dream run, 3 years in a row. And this year, they're likely to probably end the year as the second largest passenger vehicle maker.
Right.
And company is not resting on its laurel.
That's right.
If 22 to 24 was about electrification, this year we saw an announcement of a flexible architecture.
That's right. Yeah, that's the big announcement they made. Yeah.
New IQ. And that is, future-proofing themselves from market if it were to move back to ICE. Or hybrid.
And more where they only have one model in the sub 4 meter, they're
going to have multiple options.
Multiple options, because again, the GST has shown they made them a little vulnerable. They couldn't take full advantage of the segment, which got the maximum benefit.
Absolutely. So it has been a phenomenal run, I think, and plus future-proofing themselves. Again, they've announced that they're going to be doubling their turnover to 2.18 lakh crore from a base of FY20, Hormazd. This company is on a dream run and continues to launch new models, and appears they're going to move from strength to strength.
And Tata Motors, they ended the year on a high with the Sierra, 70,000+ bookings. As we said, they put their heart and soul into this. All new product, all new platform, new engine. They've kind of debuted a new engine, even in the Harrier. So, they've really they've come back with petrol right now. So that's been good. I think they were also ones who took the maximum benefit of the GST announcement, which I think that one year was some 22,000 Nexon. It's an insane number.
Yeah,
so I think, they've done fairly well. I think clearly, it's a company that fights back.
Yeah.
Obviously, they do have their challenges too, but I think clearly, 26 could be an exciting year for them as well.
Absolutely, and long-term commitment from Tata's as well, Hormazd. They want to be, in terms of market share, they want to get into SUV. Second largest SUV maker is what they're targeting with the Sierra.
Yeah.
And they want to get to 20% market share when it comes to passenger vehicle by the end of the decade. So clearly their ambitions are also big, just like Mahindra's. So it's going to be challenging for Hyundai and Maruti if both the Indian brands are going to be sustaining this momentum.
That's right. And Toyota, we know they've got a huge commitment, but nothing new, no new launches this year. We've got their version of the Vitara next year, so that's going to be interesting. But I think 2025 really just business as usual.
Yes.
Everything firing well in the super efficient and profitable Toyota way.
Yes.
So I think that's been that's Toyota. Then I think we have all the other so-called smaller players. MG again just become a one-product company with the Windsor. We talked about this. And I think Volkswagen, Skoda, I think they're the ones which are really kind of, let's say, figuring out their destiny. I don't think any announcement has been made for a partner. It's clear that they need someone. I think the whole year has been gone in figuring out what their future is going to be. So really, obviously, no new launches this year. Kailak was there.
Yes.
I think, Kailak was there at the beginning of the year. So I think Skoda really done well with that.
Yeah.
And I think Kailak is really kind of one of those cars that has been superbly engineered, really has let's say, sparked interest with consumers. It struck a chord, doing pretty decent numbers.
Yeah.
Obviously, limited powertrains.
Yeah.
But I think for Skoda, I think this has been one car that's given them a boost this year.
What about Kia, Hormazd?
Yeah, of course. How could we forget about Kia? But I think Kia, again, Ceros had a lot of potential, but I think they messed it up by being too kind of, let's say, greedy with the pricing, to put it simply. Because, it had all the features. It had, everything of a level that even a Seltos would. But, in the end of the day, the Indian consumer is very value driven, and he knows. And the question he asks is, this is a sub 4 meter car.
Yeah.
You've given it sub 4 meter specs, whereas engine goes.
Right.
Why are you charging me, plus for sub 4 meter pricing? And I think that really has been the issue. They corrected the prices to a great deal during GST, but I think, you just have that one shot. And I think the Ceros, which had a lot of potential, really hasn't done well at all. And I think the other vehicle is the Clavis EV. Again, a very well, sensible, sorted out vehicle, 3 rows. And I think actually it's a good counter to the Creta EV, and in some ways much better because bigger and more practical and has the
Absolutely.
same kind of sensible, solid engineering.
Absolutely. What about Honda Hormazd?
Well, Honda, again, nothing much this year. We all went to the Tokyo show.
Yeah.
We saw what Honda is doing. Obviously, again, going back to, I think, big plans for India. Honda, again, doubling down on India after decades. So at least, though they didn't do much this year, clearly, you know, they've given us the confidence that there's a lot happening in the future. So we just have to wait for that.
Then the other two brands are Renault, Nissan. Yes, we did mention about Renault buying out the factory, but going to be
Well, we had some facelifts. We had the Tribo facelift. We've had
Kaigo facelift.
Yeah, we had the Kaigo facelift. So obviously that has happened. I think Nissan soldiering on with the Magnite, which was upgraded as well some time back. And I think a silly thing they did was the way they disposed of their X-Trail. Yeah, they just sold it off to Big Boys Toys at a very, let's say, throwaway price. Dealers were up in arms, who then went on to just spruce it up a bit and sell it back to consumers. So really, I think Nissan muddling along more than Renault.
Right.
And, but again, next year they've got a vehicle, Renault's got a vehicle, both of them, let's say mid-size SUVs. You're going to see, so nothing much from these brands again. So I think 2026 is going to be looking exciting. 2025 was also exciting. It's never dull in the Indian auto industry. It's really one market which is so dynamic, so unpredictable, with a combination of, multiple regulations being thrown at you and the twists and turns in the market. Then one in the end can never predict which way the customer is going to go or which products he's going to turn to. Well, that's our wrap for 2025. Wish you all the best for 2026. Happy New Year. See you again next year, same time on a Saturday morning. Thanks for watching.